Okay, number 25, and are you ready for calculus? 25, we just want to find the domain of this function. So the domain are any values of x that are acceptable. The top looks okay, but the bottom, remember we have a radical. We can't have 0 in the denominator, and we can't have a negative under the radical. So this expression must be greater than 0. It can't be equal to 0, otherwise I would have 0 in the denominator. So I just have to check that now. We had these inequalities a little bit earlier. How do we check these inequalities? Well, the easiest way is to graph it. So we can find the zeros. We know it's a parabola. It's going to be shaped like a U, and these will be the intercepts. It was easy enough to factor this simple trinomial, and the intercepts were -2, 1. So any of these points from -2 to 1, it is 0 or less than 0, so that cannot be. So the domain would be values of x over here, which would be less than -2 or greater than 1. And that's where it's going to be greater than 0. And if that bottom is greater, if this radicand is greater than 0, then that's okay. But this radicand cannot be 0 or negative. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. Now the B part, first of all, the first part, f of x equals 7. Okay, we want the domain and the range. Well, the domain is just all real numbers because all that is a horizontal line. Y equals 7. So the domain is all real numbers, and the range would be just the number 7 because it's always equal to 7. So that was easy. It's just a horizontal line, y equals 7. Now the second part, we have this rational expression. Now remember, rational expressions, you have to always check for asymptotes. And if we look at the bottom, 2x plus 1, 2x plus 1 can't be 0. And that's going to give us a vertical asymptote, so I solve that. X cannot be -1/2. And that's what we have, is we have a vertical asymptote. I kind of sketched it over here so you can see it. But we also notice that the degree of the numerator and the denominator are the same, so if that's the case, then we do have a horizontal asymptote. Remember, the degrees are the same. We have a horizontal asymptotes, and if there would actually be, the horizontal asymptote would actually be the line y equals, and it's just the ratio of the coefficient of the top highest degree term over the bottom highest degree term. Those would be the same, so 5/2. So we have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 5/2. That means that it's approaching 5/2, but doesn't equal 5/2. And if you sketch the graph, it would look something like this. And there's your vertical asymptote at x equal to -1/2, going up and down there. And here's your horizontal asymptote at y equals 5/2. So the domain are all real numbers except for the -1/2, and the range are all real numbers except for the 5/2. So you can kind of figure that out. Sketching the graph, knowing your horizontal and vertical asymptotes helps quite a bit. Okay? So that wasn't too bad.